Before Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon, before Augustus rewrote the rules, Rome was not an empire, it was something stranger. A republic governed by two men elected for exactly 1 year, each with the power to cancel the other. They called it the veto, from the Latin, I forbid, a single word that stopped entire armies. Rome built this system because it had already lived through kings and decided it would rather tear itself apart than be ruled by one man again. What Rome invented was not democracy, it was something more durable, a system of organized distrust. The Senate, the consuls, the tribunes, every branch existed specifically to check the others. Every law was written down. Every citizen, at least the ones who counted, had recourse. The Roman legal code became so precise that it governed 70 million people across 3 continents without a telephone, without a computer, without anything we would recognize as communication infrastructure. Judges in Roman Britain applied the same laws as judges in Roman Egypt. That had never happened before in human history. Caesar broke it, not because he was evil, because the system had a fatal flaw. It trusted that powerful men would respect limits. Caesar looked at those limits and crossed them anyway. He crossed the Rubicon in 49 BC with 1 legion and ended 500 years of the Republic in an afternoon. He was stabbed 23 times on the Senate floor on March 15th, 44 BC. 23 men, each one took a turn. That detail is not incidental. It was designed. If everyone stabbed Caesar, no single man was a murderer. Rome's legal instincts survived even the assassination of the man who destroyed Roman law. His successor Augustus kept every republican institution. He just made himself permanent. He never called himself king. He called himself first citizen. The Senate still met. Elections still happened. The Republic's ghost walked the halls of an empire for 400 more years. The United States Constitution was written by men who had read Cicero in the original Latin. The Senate, the veto, the separation of powers, the system Rome built and then failed to protect, became the blueprint every Western democracy copied. The most powerful republic in human history learned everything it knew from a civilization that died 1,500 years earlier. In 221 BC, a man named Ying Zheng finished a war that had lasted 250 years. He did not call himself king. He invented a new word, emperor, the first one. Qin Shi Huang, the first sovereign emperor, and he meant it literally. 7 kingdoms had spent centuries bleeding each other. Qin Shi Huang spent 17 years absorbing them one by one. When the last fell, he did not celebrate. He got to work. He burned the history books, not metaphorically. He ordered the physical destruction of every historical record from every conquered kingdom and executed scholars who refused to comply. 460 of them buried alive in a single day. He was not interested in the past. He was building a future, and the past was competition. What he built was unprecedented. 1 currency across every territory, 1 system of weights and measures, 1 written script imposed on every region regardless of what language they spoke. Roads built to identical widths so that car axles were standardized across an empire 2,000 miles wide. He did not conquer China. He manufactured it. The bureaucratic system he created, governors appointed by merit, not birth, officials rotated to prevent local loyalty, a civil service answerable directly to the center, survived him by 2,000 years. The Han Dynasty that replaced him kept his administrative structure almost intact. So did every Chinese dynasty that followed. So does the People's Republic of China today. He was also terrified of death. He sent expeditions across the ocean searching for the elixir of immortality. His doctors fed him mercury pills, believing they prolonged life. They killed him instead. He died in 210 BC, age 49, on a road trip, far from his capital, attended by men who hid his death for weeks because they feared what would happen when the news broke. His body decomposed in the summer heat. They covered the smell with cartloads of fish. His empire lasted 15 years after his death. The man who unified China and invented the nation-state built a system so brutal and so efficient that it collapsed under its own weight the moment he stopped holding it together. The dynasty died. The system lived forever. In 507 BC, Cleisthenes handed Athens something no one had ever handed to anyone: a vote, not a petition, not an appeal to a king, a vote. The ability to decide who ruled and how. He called it democratia, demos, the people, kratos, power, and almost immediately, the people used it to make catastrophic decisions. They voted to invade Sicily in 415 BC. The expedition destroyed 50,000 men and 200 ships. They voted to execute their own generals because the bodies of the dead hadn't been recovered. Then they voted to execute Socrates, the greatest philosopher in their civilization, for asking questions that made people uncomfortable. Socrates accepted the verdict. He argued that a man who benefited from a system owed it obedience, even when it turned against him. He drank the hemlock in 399 BC, surrounded by his students, still arguing. His last words were to remind a friend about a debt, not a speech, not a curse, a debt. Plato watched his teacher die and concluded democracy was a disease. His answer, a government of philosopher kings, trained to reason rather than feel. He was not wrong about the flaws, only wrong about the cure. Then came Alexander, Aristotle's student, educated, disciplined, relentless. He built the largest empire ever assembled by one person in a lifetime. Persia, Egypt, Mesopotamia, the borders of India, where his army finally said, no further. He died in Babylon, 323 BC, age 32. His generals immediately carved the empire apart. When asked on his deathbed who should rule after him, he said, the strongest. They spent the next 40 years proving him right in the worst way imaginable. The idea survived the man. Greek philosophy became Roman. Roman became church. Church became enlightenment. Every concept used today to justify power, reason, rights, civic duty, traces back to men in a city smaller than Sacramento, arguing in open squares about what it meant to be free. They never solved it. They gave us the question. We are still answering it.